It was a regular Thursday afternoon when Amina was walking home from school. The air was warm, and the streets were buzzing with the usual noise of city life. Amina, with her backpack slung over her shoulder, was lost in thought, thinking about her homework and the soccer game she was planning to watch later. As she passed the busy market, something caught her eye. By the side of the road, under a tree that offered little shelter from the harsh sun, a small, motionless figure lay on the ground. Amina's heart skipped a beat when she realized it was a dog. Its fur was matted and dirty, its body frail, and it was barely breathing. The dog's eyes were barely open, and it looked as though it had been left there to die. Most people were walking by, too busy with their own lives to notice. But Amina couldn't just ignore it. She hesitated for a moment, then crouched beside the dog, her breath quickening. The poor creature's body was cold, and it didn't respond when she gently touched its paw. Was it even alive? Amina wasn't sure, but the thought of leaving it there, helpless, made her stomach churn. She quickly scanned the area for help but saw no one who could offer assistance. Without thinking twice, Amina carefully took off her scarf and wrapped it around the dog's body. Her hands shook as she scooped the animal into her arms, feeling its weight against her chest. It was lighter than she expected, almost too light, as though it hadn't eaten in days. Despite her fear, she whispered soothing words to the dog, as if that would somehow reassure it. She knew she couldn't just leave it here. Amina stood up, holding the dog close to her, feeling its labored breath. She turned down the street and ran to the nearest public phone booth. Her heart raced as she dialed her older brother's number. "Ali, you need to come quickly," she said, her voice shaking. "There's a dog on the road, and it looks like it's dying. I don't know what to do, but I can't just leave it." Ali's response was immediate. "I'll be there in 5 minutes. Stay with it." As Amina returned to the spot where she had found the dog, she carefully placed it on the cool ground and kept an eye on its shallow breaths. She felt powerless, but she couldn't bring herself to give up. Ali arrived moments later, and together they rushed the dog to the nearby vet clinic. The dog was in bad shape, but the vet reassured them that there was still hope. "It's critical," the vet said, "but with some care, it might pull through." Amina looked down at the small dog and whispered, "Please be okay." She had no idea how much her life was about to change, but one thing was clear. She was going to do everything she could to save this dog. The following days were filled with a mix of hope and anxiety. Amina visited the vet clinic every day after school, her heart always racing as she stepped inside. Each time she walked into the clinic, she half expected to be told that the dog hadn't made it, but every time, the vet reassured her that Leo was holding on. His condition was improving, though still fragile. The small dog had been badly dehydrated, weak from the injuries sustained in the accident, but slowly his strength was returning. Amina named him Leo, inspired by the small but brave glimmer of life she saw in his eyes every time she visited. She wasn't sure why, but there was something about him that pulled at her heartstrings. Even though he couldn't speak, his quiet presence spoke volumes. He seemed to understand that she was there to help him, and in return, his eyes seemed to say, "Thank you." At first, Leo was too weak to move much, but with each passing day, Amina began to notice small changes. His breathing became steadier, and his once dull eyes started to show signs of life. His body, which had been cold and stiff, began to relax as the swelling in his limbs went down. Leo even started to wag his tail weakly when Amina approached him. Amina would sit beside him, talking softly about her day, even though she knew he couldn't understand the words. She brushed his fur gently and fed him small portions of food the vet had recommended. She could see the difference in him, and that gave her hope. It was as though their bond was growing stronger with each visit, and with every ounce of energy he regained, she felt more and more connected to him. But as much as she wanted to believe that Leo was getting better, there was always a nagging fear in the back of her mind. What if he didn't make it? What if all her efforts had been in vain? The thought of losing him, after all the effort she'd put into saving him, was unbearable. But whenever those thoughts crept in, Leo's eyes would meet hers, and she'd see that same quiet determination in his gaze. He wasn't giving up, and neither was she. One evening, as Amina was sitting by Leo's side, the vet walked in with a smile on his face. "He's showing remarkable improvement," he said. "I think he's going to be just fine. With a bit more time, he'll be back to his old self." Amina's heart soared with relief. She knew it wasn't over yet, but the worst was behind them. Leo was going to make it. Amina stayed by his side a little longer that night, gently stroking his fur. She had saved him once, and now he was going to make it, all thanks to her. As the weeks went by, Leo's recovery was nothing short of miraculous. His once frail body had grown stronger, and his playful nature began to emerge again. He started to wag his tail with excitement when Amina entered the clinic, and his once dull eyes sparkled with a renewed energy. The vet was impressed with how far Leo had come, his recovery far surpassing what anyone had initially expected. But as much as Amina loved Leo and felt a deep bond with him, reality began to set in. The vet gently reminded her that she couldn't keep him. Amina's family didn't have the means or the space to care for a dog, and the rules of their apartment building strictly prohibited pets. Amina's heart sank. She had known this moment might come, but it didn't make it any easier. Her parents had been supportive of her efforts to save Leo, but they had made it clear from the start that adopting him wasn't a feasible option. They reminded her that it wasn't just about love. It was about being responsible for a pet's long-term care. As much as Amina had hoped things would work out, she couldn't argue with their reasoning. She was just a kid, and there were things beyond her control. The thought of letting Leo go was heartbreaking. He had become so much more than just a dog to her. He was a friend, a companion who had silently shared in her joys and fears during his recovery. Saying goodbye felt impossible. But Amina knew what had to be done. With the help of the vet, Amina and her family started searching for a new home for Leo. They didn't want him to end up in a shelter. They wanted him to find a loving family where he could live out the rest of his life happily. It took a few days, but soon they found a potential adopter. An elderly man named Mr. Faisal. He had recently lost his dog, and after hearing about Leo's journey, he was eager to give him a new home. When Amina met Mr. Faisal, she could tell that he was kind-hearted and had a deep love for animals. He had a small house with a garden where Leo could run and play. Amina felt a mix of emotions as she introduced Leo to Mr. Faisal. She wanted to believe this was the right choice, but part of her still couldn't let go. That day, as the adoption was finalized, Amina gave Leo one last hug. "You're going to be okay, Leo," she whispered, her voice trembling. Leo licked her cheek as if he understood, and for a brief moment, she thought she saw a hint of sadness in his eyes. It was the hardest goodbye she'd ever had to say, but Amina knew she had done the right thing. As Leo walked away with Mr. Faisal, Amina watched him go, her heart heavy with loss but filled with hope for his future. She had saved him once, and now she was trusting someone else to care for him. Little did she know, this wasn't the last time she would see Leo. The weeks that followed were quiet, and Amina's life settled into a routine once more. School, soccer practice, and time with her family filled her days. But no matter how busy she kept herself, there was always a quiet longing in her heart. She missed Leo. She missed the way his tail wagged when he saw her, the soft, trusting look in his eyes as he lay next to her, recovering. It had been hard enough to let him go, but now, living without him, felt even harder. Amina often thought about him, wondering if he was happy in his new home with Mr. Faisal. She'd heard from the vet a few times, and each update assured her that Leo was adjusting well. He had a nice yard to play in, and Mr. Faisal was taking good care of him. Still, Amina couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. Every time she passed the spot on the road where she had first found Leo, a wave of sadness washed over her. One afternoon, Amina was sitting in her room, doing her homework, when her phone buzzed. It was a message from her older brother, Ali. "Hey, guess who I saw today?" It read. Amina's heart skipped a beat. Could it be? She quickly opened the message, which included a picture of Leo, sitting on the sidewalk near a cafe, looking perfectly healthy, his fur shiny and thick. The message continued. Mr. Faisal said he found Leo near our street again. He's just sitting there like he's waiting for someone. Amina's breath caught in her throat. She couldn't believe it. Leo was back in their neighborhood. She quickly texted Ali, asking where he was, and he replied that Leo had been wandering around for a while. Amina knew she had to see him. So without a second thought, she grabbed her jacket and ran out the door. As she walked down the familiar streets, her mind raced. What was Leo doing here? Did he miss her as much as she missed him? When she reached the street corner near the cafe, there he was, sitting on the pavement, looking as though he was waiting patiently for something. Amina's heart swelled with emotion as she called out his name. "Leo," she shouted, her voice full of joy and disbelief. The moment he heard her voice, Leo's ears perked up, and his tail began to wag furiously. He jumped to his feet and trotted toward her, his excited barks echoing down the street. Amina dropped to her knees, and without hesitation, Leo leaped into her arms, licking her face as if he hadn't seen her in years. Amina laughed through her tears, hugging him tight. She couldn't believe he had come back to her. It was as if they had never been apart. As Leo licked her face and nuzzled her neck, Amina realized one thing for sure. This wasn't just a coincidence. Leo had found his way back to her, and this time, she wouldn't let him go. "You said." Amina sat on the steps of the cafe. Leo curled up beside her, looking perfectly at ease. Her heart was still racing from the joy of seeing him again, but 1,000 questions were swirling in her mind. How had he found his way back to her? She had heard stories of dogs returning to their owners, but this felt different. Leo had been with Mr. Faisal for months, and yet here he was, back in the neighborhood as if he had never left. As they sat there, Ali arrived, his eyes wide in disbelief when he saw Leo. "I can't believe it," he said, kneeling down to pet the dog. "This is incredible." Amina felt a mixture of emotions. On one hand, she was overjoyed that Leo had found his way back to her. On the other hand, she felt a bit confused. She couldn't understand how he could have traveled so far on his own. It seemed almost impossible. The next day, Amina and her parents went over to Mr. Faisal's house to talk about what had happened. Mr. Faisal welcomed them warmly, though there was a note of concern in his voice. "I'm so glad Leo found his way back to you," he said, "but he's been acting strangely for weeks now. He would wander off every night, and I couldn't figure out where he was going. It was like he was searching for something or someone." Amina's heart sank. She hadn't realized that Leo had been restless in Mr. Faisal's care. "You mean he was looking for me?" Amina asked, her voice trembling with the weight of the realization. Mr. Faisal nodded slowly. "I think so. I've never seen a dog so determined to find someone before. It's like he knew exactly where to go. He'd run off, and I'd find him hours later, sitting near the corner of the street, as though he was waiting for you." Amina's mind raced. Could it be possible that Leo had been trying to find her this entire time? He had always been a special dog, but this was something beyond coincidence. The more she thought about it, the more she realized that there was something deeper at work. Leo wasn't just a pet to her. He had become a part of her life, a bond that couldn't easily be broken. "I'm sorry, Mr. Faisal," Amina said quietly, "but I think Leo belongs with me." Mr. Faisal smiled, understanding in his eyes. "I've seen how much you love him, Amina. It's clear he belongs with you too." With Mr. Faisal's blessing, Amina took Leo back home. The little dog, who had once been left for dead on the side of the road, was now more than just a rescued animal. He had become her family, and the bond between them was stronger than ever. But as they left Mr. Faisal's house and headed back to Amina's apartment, she couldn't help but wonder, what was it that had driven Leo to find her again? What was it about their connection that was so powerful, so undeniable? As they walked down the street, Leo trotted happily beside her, his tail wagging. Whatever the reason, Amina knew one thing for sure. They were meant to be together, and nothing, not distance or time, would ever change that. Life slowly returned to a new normal for Amina and Leo. With Leo back by her side, Amina's heart felt complete once again. The empty space in her life that had been there since she had let him go was now filled with the warmth of his presence. She didn't have to walk alone anymore. Everywhere she went, Leo was right there with her, his tail wagging as he trotted beside her, his eyes bright with joy. The bond they shared was undeniable, and Amina was grateful every day for the second chance they had been given. Leo settled in easily, his playful nature never faltering. He quickly became a familiar sight in the neighborhood, his cheerful barks greeting everyone who passed by. Amina's neighbors, who had watched her rescue him months ago, were overjoyed to see the reunion. They all admired Leo's resilience and strength, but Amina knew that their bond went deeper than just the simple act of saving a dog from the side of the road. It was something that transcended the ordinary. One evening, as Amina was walking home from school, she felt a strange sense of unease. It was one of those quiet moments when everything seemed too still. The air was thick, the usual sounds of the city were muffled, and Amina couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Leo, too, seemed to sense it. His usual playfulness was gone, replaced by a tension in his stance. His ears were perked up, and his tail was still. It was as if he was alert to something that Amina couldn't see. They walked further down the street, and as they neared an alleyway, a car slowed down beside them. Amina glanced at the driver, but before she could think much of it, the car stopped completely, and the door swung open. A man stepped out quickly, his expression cold and intent. He reached toward Amina, trying to grab her arm. Fear surged through Amina, and her heart pounded in her chest. "No," she screamed, trying to pull away. But the man was strong, and he was getting closer. Just as she was about to panic, Leo acted. With a loud bark, he charged at the man, his small but determined body leaping forward as he bared his teeth. The man was taken off guard, stumbling back as Leo's teeth nipped at his legs. The man backed away in surprise, shouting at the dog, but Leo didn't stop. He barked fiercely, protecting Amina with all his might. The man hesitated, his eyes wide with shock. He clearly hadn't expected a small dog to be so brave. He looked at Leo one more time, then bolted back into his car, speeding away down the street. Amina, trembling with fear, looked down at Leo, who was still growling, his body tense but proud. He had saved her. Amina sank to her knees, her hands shaking as she stroked Leo's fur. "You saved me," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Leo looked up at her, his eyes softening as if to say, "I'll always protect you." In that moment, Amina realized just how deep their connection truly went. Leo wasn't just the dog she had saved. He had become her protector, her friend, her family. And as they walked home together, Amina knew that whatever the future held, they would face it side by side. The days following the incident with the man in the car were filled with a deep sense of gratitude. Amina couldn't stop thinking about how Leo had saved her. She kept replaying the moment in her mind, the way Leo had leaped to her defense without hesitation, risking his own safety to protect her. It wasn't just instinct. It was love, loyalty, and a bond that had been forged in the most unlikely of circumstances. The neighborhood had been buzzing with talk about the brave little dog who had stopped a stranger in his tracks. Word spread fast, and people were in awe of Leo's protective instincts. Amina's friends at school teased her with pride, calling Leo her guardian angel. But Amina knew it was much more than that. Leo was a hero, and she was lucky to have him in her life. Though the streets felt safer now, Amina remained cautious, always keeping an eye out for any danger. She couldn't shake the feeling that something else was lurking, waiting to test Leo's loyalty again. But for the most part, life continued as it always had. She spent her days at school and her afternoons at home with Leo, playing and laughing as he chased after sticks and rolled in the grass. There was no place she'd rather be than with him. One sunny afternoon, Amina and Leo decided to take a walk to the park. It was a tradition for them, a time to enjoy the simple pleasures of life together. The park was just a few blocks away, and the sun was warm, casting long shadows on the pavement. As they strolled through the park, Amina noticed how happy Leo seemed. He was bounding through the grass, his tail wagging furiously as he sniffed around and investigated every corner. She smiled, watching him with affection. But then something strange happened. As they neared the park's entrance, a man on a bicycle sped past them, and Amina noticed a flash of something in his hand. Something shiny, something that caught the sunlight. Before she could even process what it was, the man veered off the path and headed straight toward her, his bicycle screeching to a halt. Amina froze, and Leo, who had been happily trotting along, suddenly stiffened. His ears perked up, and his growl was low and warning, almost as if he knew what was about to happen. The man looked at Amina with an unnerving smile and raised the shiny object in his hand. Amina's breath caught in her throat. It was a knife. Fear gripped her, but before she could react, Leo leaped in front of her, blocking the man's path. The dog's hackles were raised, and his teeth were bared, a deep growl rumbling from his chest. The man hesitated, clearly startled by Leo's sudden appearance. For a split second, the tension was thick in the air. The man stepped back, his eyes shifting nervously from Leo to Amina. He raised his hands, dropping the knife, and took a few steps back, his gaze flicking between them. Leo didn't move an inch, standing his ground, his eyes locked on the man as if daring him to try anything. "I don't want trouble," the man muttered, slowly backing away. "I'm sorry." Amina, her heart pounding, watched as the man turned and ran, disappearing down the path. Leo remained in place, watching him until he was out of sight. Only then did he relax, his tail wagging gently as if he had simply done his job. Amina kneeled down and hugged Leo tightly, her voice shaky as she whispered, "You saved me again. You really are my hero." Leo licked her cheek, his calm eyes soft and understanding. In that moment, Amina knew that she was never truly alone. Leo was always there, guarding her, protecting her. It wasn't just a bond. It was something deeper, something unbreakable. Amina stood up, taking Leo's leash in her hand, and together, they continued their walk. But from that day on, Amina knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. She had saved Leo once, but in return, he had become her protector, a guardian she could always count on. It wasn't just luck that had brought them together, it was fate. As the weeks turned into months, Amina and Leo's bond only grew stronger. The events of the past few months had shown them both just how deep their connection went, far beyond that fateful day when Amina had found him on the side of the road. Leo wasn't just a pet. He wasn't just a dog that Amina had saved. He was her companion, her protector, and in many ways, her greatest friend. Amina couldn't help but reflect on how much their lives had changed since that moment. Leo had been near death, abandoned and broken. But through her determination and love, he had not only survived, he had thrived. And now, it was Leo who had become Amina's protector, always watching over her, keeping her safe from harm. It seemed like a role reversal, but it felt completely natural. There was something about the way Leo looked at her, something that told her they were more than just owner and pet. They were family, in the truest sense of the word. As the seasons changed, so did their routines. Amina took Leo on longer walks, exploring new places in the city. They spent weekends in the park, running through fields and playing catch, their laughter echoing in the air. Leo had transformed from a frail, sickly dog into a strong, confident animal. He had a joy for life that was contagious, and Amina found herself smiling more than she ever had before. One evening, as they sat on the porch together, watching the sunset, Amina couldn't help but feel overwhelmed with emotion. Leo sat beside her, his head resting against her knee as she gently stroked his fur. It was a quiet moment, one that spoke volumes without a single word being exchanged. Amina knew that no matter what life threw her way, she would always have Leo by her side. Amina had shared her story about Leo with her friends, her family, and even some strangers who had heard about the courageous dog who had saved her. It was a story that resonated with everyone who heard it. A story of unexpected heroism, of a bond that defied all odds. But for Amina, the most incredible part wasn't just the way Leo had saved her. It was the way they had saved each other. Leo had not only given Amina a sense of security, he had also brought a new sense of purpose to her life. He had shown her the true meaning of loyalty, of love without conditions. And in return, Amina had given him a chance at life, a second chance to experience the world, to run and play and be loved. It was a bond that neither of them would ever take for granted. Amina looked down at Leo, his eyes soft and full of trust, and smiled. "Thank you, Leo," she whispered, "for everything." Leo's tail thumped softly against the ground, his eyes reflecting the same gratitude that Amina felt in her heart. In that moment, Amina realized that she didn't just owe her life to Leo. She owed him a life full of love, care, and protection, a life where he would always be cherished. As the stars began to twinkle in the sky above them, Amina and Leo stayed together, side by side, knowing that whatever the future held, they would face it together. There was no bond stronger than the one they shared, a bond built on trust, love, and the unspoken understanding that no matter what, they would always be there for each other. Their story was far from over. It was just the beginning.